Okay, relatives, good to see you. Dayan Wachi Yankapalo. It's good to see you all. I'm going to do a reading out of the Elder's Meditation, but first of all, I want to get started with the smudge. And this is my bag of sage. It's not what it might look like. Back in the day, it would be, but certainly not that much. But I'm going to go ahead and get started with the smudge. And I hope that you can hear me, because I got these, went and bought these expensive earbuds, but sometimes I don't know whether they're in or out, and then I come to find out that they're not, and so it's kind of frustrating. But anyways, I did want to do a reading today. It's been a while. I'm trying to take these to YouTube, but the reason why I'm doing one tonight is because Saturday night is a hard time for me to find a talking circle. So this is my way of sort of making up for that. And so I always like to get started with a smudge, a ceremony. And so that's what I'll do. And then I'll just go ahead and start the reading. So I want to offer that up to you and your families. And it's a good way to get started with your day. I smudge at least once a day. But this will be the second time that I smudge down. I talked to somebody earlier and I felt like that was a good time to smudge. So today is November 30th. I'm going to do it out of this book, The Meditation with the Native American Elders. And I always say I have no idea what it's going to say. None. I have no idea. So it's my way of putting myself on the spot. And I'm really thirsty, by the way. I also just did something that was really, really, really embarrassing. And when I mean really embarrassing. So I don't know whether to be horrified or to laugh. So at this point, I think I'm really doing both. But yeah, it was just, well, I'll just leave it at that. Excuse me, sorry about that. So I'm going to do the reading for today for November 30th, and then I'm just going to talk about my thoughts on the reading. It looks like it's kind of a lengthy reading, but it looks like tomorrow is going to be even longer. But I think it's a good day because it's the end of November, and we just came out of Thanksgiving, and now we're going to go into the Christmas season. So I think it's always a good way to sort of reflect on a month, to sort of in a way of reflecting, in a way of going into deep reflection and thinking about things, and then also letting go, and then welcoming in sort of a new season, a new holiday season. So even if, like for me, for instance, I don't really celebrate federal holidays, shall I say. I mean, I will acknowledge them, and I definitely appreciate any time that raises a level of gratitude and of gift giving and of seeing each other as family. Definitely, I will always appreciate that and join in that. I just don't particularly, as an individual, I'm not encouraging or discouraging anybody, though you might get the wrong, you might assume something differently according to my post on Facebook, but I'm just saying, every day is a day for Thanksgiving, and every day is a day to increase our relationship with our spirituality, or look for ways to go within. Anyways, I'll get to the reading. November 30th. Someone must speak for them. I do not see a delegation for the four-footed. I see no seats for the eagles. We forget that we consider ourselves superior, but we are, after all, a mere part of creation. All right, I'm loving this one already. Whenever we make decisions, we need to look around and see who would be affected by them. If we change the course of a river, what will be affected? If we put poison on the gardens, what will be affected? If we cut the trees and too many are cut, what will be affected? We need to become aware of the consequences of our actions. We need to pay attention to our thoughts. We are accountable to our children to leave the earth in good shape. Then there's a brief prayer. My Creator, help me make right decisions. Okay, so there, I love that, and I believe that. That's the type of philosophy that is a part of the way that I live. And so, man, when I think about that, I could just go in any number of directions with that. Like already, my mind is working. My mind is working. But we only have so much time. So it's hard for me to sort of center myself when that triggers the thoughts in the spirit of the soul. And I just it's just really good conversations to have, and I get excited about it. And so it talks about, it's really giving voice to the philosophy of people of indigenous Native American beliefs. Now, the interesting thing about that is that I know a lot of non-natives who as well believe this type of life way, believe this type of philosophy. Who are very much connected with these type of beliefs, who very much think about the impact of our decisions upon our relationship, like they said, with the four-footed, the four-legged, Grandmother Earth, the environment. Now, the environment, even the words that we choose to use, are important, because when we speak in terms of the environment, we automatically think of the environment. We automatically think of the air, we think of the land, we think of waters, and we think of the impact of those. So that is good words to use, but typically, and that can bring us closer together, that can really give us purpose when we think of what we're doing, how we're acting, what we're believing, and the way that human beings are really sort of negligent. And so my point is, before I get veered off into too far, is that these type of readings, it says meditation with the Native American elders. Now that's where it comes from, but I know there are many non-natives who think like this too, and there are many natives who don't think like this. So I'm just really grateful that I do, because no matter what skin color you are, if you trace your background, if you trace your genealogy or your ancestry, you're going to trace, if you're able to do that. But I can pretty much promise you're going to trace yourself back to a time when it was your ancestors as well who had a relationship with Grandmother Earth, who had a thought system and behavior, belief system that was just like this. Now, it just so happens that we live in the USA, where our indigenous people lived their lives much closer to that time, and where that philosophy is here. And so since that is here, that spirit, that relationship, that kinship with the lands and with that ideology, with that philosophy is very fresh. And even then, I realize that it is pretty much everywhere you go, because there are indigenous people. But again, you don't have to be indigenous. This probably speaks very much to your spirit if you are non-indigenous, if you are wherever you are from. Oh God, there are so many ways that I can go with this. And so, like, even in English terms, in philosophies, the word environment brings that up, okay? But the actual words that we choose to use can actually distance ourselves from. In indigenous philosophy, we regard, like they mentioned, the four-footed. I typically use four-legged, in other words, the animals. Now, it's interesting because I can't quote the study or give you the source of this study, but this, you might be able to understand this, and certainly I relate to this, is that there's a vast majority of people who feel much more connected and trusting and open, like, towards their four-legged relatives, their pets. They feel safer with, they have developed a friendship, a kinship, a powerful connection with their pets. And certainly I understand that. I don't have any pets, but oh man, I love pets. And I won't go off into that. And so this reading is important because it acknowledges that oh my gosh, let me just put it this way. I'm going to try and come back again. The language that we use is really important, and so we use environment, we use resources, we use language that puts us at a distance from these relatives, such as the four-legged, such as the winds, such as the eagles, the relatives with wings. You'll notice that I use different words. I use the term relatives. And of course, I think it's widely known that in Lakota and Dakota philosophy and language, we use the term mitakuye oyase, referring to we are all related. So in other words, even the language that we can use can draw and connect us closer to these powers of these relatives, to the powers of and respect for the environment. And so the word environment, we automatically think of, like I said, the waters. Well, guess what? In our native philosophies, we believe that the waters are relatives because, well, scientifically speaking, we are water. We are literally walking, breathing, and conscious water. So we have a tendency in native philosophy to view a river as having a consciousness, as having a language, as having a kinship. And of course, the rivers are so important. Now, obviously, how can I, without the rivers, we wouldn't be alive today. Without the waters, we wouldn't exist. And so, even terms such as the environment and resources kind of divide us. It makes it seem as though the environment is like separate. Whereas in our indigenous philosophy, we view the rivers as a relative. We view the animals, okay? Usually, typically, when we think of animals, what we're taught is that the animals are below us. The animals, they're there to serve us, that they don't have a mind, that we're smarter than them. Based on what evidence is based on the evidence from the viewpoint of us. So we're the ones compiling all this evidence. We're the one compiling all this perspective based upon the limited viewpoint of our own ideology, of our own, and anyways, so we view animals as relatives too. We view and we split them up in different sort of, there is so much respect there that there is stories, and that there is evidence that strengthens these relationships. So we don't necessarily say these are the animals, because now we're classifying a whole bunch of relatives as under one word, animals. But in our native philosophy, we view each individual nation as important within, like, the life cycle and the philosophy of life. And so we will say the Wambli Oyate, Wambadi Oyate, the Eagle Nation, the Mni Oyate, the Water Nation, the Stone Nation, the Ian Oyate, the Stone Nation, the Awichakpe Oyate, the Star Nation. And we view all these nations as relatives, as living beings, because we know that they are. And scientifically speaking, it's been proven that these resources and aspects of the environment have life and are crucial to life. Without the Stone Nation, without the plant nations, without the animal nations, without the four-legged Wambadis, the elk nations, the deer nations, the bear nations, the wing nations, the eagle relatives, we view these as relatives. And when we view them as relatives, we have much more respect for these relatives. And guess what? Like, just for instance, if there's a bird or a dog nation, the Shunka nation, or the horse nation, or the spider nation, because of these words that we use, we view this strengthens our kinship in our philosophy as these are nations, these are people. Again, in terms of typical words, we think of people as us, as two-leggeds, as human beings. But in the indigenous philosophies, we expand on that. In people might mean the standing people, the tree nation. How shall I say tree? Oh gosh, that's one that's slipping my mind. It's slipping my mind. So we review the trees, and obviously, I mean, without the trees and without the waters, we wouldn't be able to breathe. They help us produce, oxygen. The plant relatives. So I use different terms to increase my respect in this philosophy, in this way of life. Different words strengthen that philosophy, my respect for the plant nations. Because without the plant nations, we wouldn't have all the medicines that we have today. And we wouldn't be able to eat. We would starve without the plant nations. So that is acknowledging this respect in this way of life, in facts. So I stay away from using the words environment and resources, and we use terms such as gifts. Gifts, like the plant nation gives us gifts. The plant nation makes sacrifices so that we can live, so that we can survive, so that we can eat, so that we can have medicines, so that we can be in prayer. The same thing with the Stone Nation. Same thing across the board. I mean, they keep us housed, right? They help us in ceremony. The same thing with our four-legged relatives. Their sacrifices to keep us fed. Their sacrifices there to keep our nations, our grandmother Earth, and this cycle, this life cycle, in balance. And so we don't necessarily use the term resources, environment. We use the term like gifts and relatives. These are relatives. The same thing with the seasons, the cycle of the season, the cycle of the ways of life. And so the reason why I bring that up is because this philosophy and this respect forms like an interconnectedness of respect, an interconnectedness of philosophy. So all of creation lives by natural law in the law in the philosophy of respect. And the reason, and this is evidence to this, and this goes beyond human language, English language, Lakota language, Spanish language. It goes into the language of that respect. It goes into the language of the soul, the spirit, of the heart. And you can tell that, like, and I'll use the most obvious example, like a horse or a dog or a cat, or even a bird or a squirrel or a rabbit. These are everyday relatives that we see. So you'll understand, like a dog will know when you respect them. A deer will know because not only of your body language or the way that you talk, how high you talk if you're yelling, but also your body language. They will know. And your body language is evidence of your mind, of how you think towards that relative. So if you walk with respect, the rabbit, trust me, a rabbit will know if you are a threat. For way before you even see a rabbit will know if you are a threat, if you are safe. A rabbit even knows when you look at them. The same goes true with the bird. A bird knows even when you look at them, when they'll know if you're walking along and you don't see them. Okay, so they'll know that you're not a threat at that time, but they'll know when you see them even, and then they will automatically start to study the type of person that you are. And so the reason why I say that is because indigenous people, the same with the dog, the same with cats. And so we automatically limit that, but we know in our indigenous philosophy is Grandmother Earth knows this as well. How we walk our lives, how we think, how we go about the respect or the lack of respect. A dog is going to know if we lack respect for his family or her family. Automatically, just like I'm going to know if you're going to walk in my home with respect or without respect. I'm going to know that. Without you even saying a word, I'm going to know that. And the same goes true with the rivers, with the water nations, with the rivers, with the land, Grandmother Earth, with the directions. And so in Native philosophy, we acknowledge the directions and the powers that come from the directions. And I won't get too much more into that because there's a lot of diversity in each individual family, as an individual, in each nation on what that means. But the common thing is that what happens is, like, for instance, if a dog wanders into my apartment now, and then he or she senses that they're in a place of safety based upon the energy of the respect or disrespect that I have. And so what happens is they're either going to leave or get mean and chase me off, or they're going to sense that I am safe based upon this respect that I have towards them, right? And what's that? Either or is going to lead to a relationship. So then they're going to respect me, and we're going to learn from each other. We're going to develop a friendship. We're going to love one another, and they're going to want me to be around their family, and I'm going to want them to be around their family. And that's a really good evidence of that. And so what happens is, now I've developed a relationship, and Native American indigenous people have known this for a long time, and we still live that way. We respect our food. We respect our water. We pray we pray with our food, and we're thankful for our food. We pray for the water. We pray with the water. We don't worship the water because they're relatives. Just like I don't want you coming into my home and like worshiping me. I want to be a relative with you. And so we don't worship these. We view these as relative, and so we are in balance. Nobody is better than anybody else. And what that happens is that produces, and that's why Native people have been given sort of the responsibility, or have agreed, and there's stories that tell us this, to be good stewards to the land. Because we have that trust, we have that love, we have that kinship. So and this works. So if I'm ever going to make a decision, and this is what I do, I'm not going to BS you, I'm not going to try and sound any sort of way. Before I make any big decisions in my life, or even small decisions, but especially before I make big decisions, I make sure that I go out onto the land, right? Just as equally as I stay here in my own home and I pray, or I hold an eagle feather. Okay, if I'm going to make or say a prayer without the eagle feather, that's good. If I'm going to talk to somebody, like right now, we're going to be able to have a good conversation. But a lot of that is going to be based upon how I view you and how I view myself. Whether I respect you or whether I respect myself. But when I pick up the feather, something happens. And there's a story about the power that goes into the feather. Okay? And I don't have time for that, but the same goes true if you're going to pick up water. And the thing about that is, we usually feel the power from an eagle feather, right? Because there's a story of how the power is there and why it's in the eagle feather. All right. But we forget that we hold the influence of all of creation. We hold the influence of our ancestors. We hold the influence of that which is sacred, just as an individual. And so we are also transferring that which is sacred, that energy, into the eagle feather itself. So it's mutual. So then if I decide that I'm going to gift this eagle feather, or I'm going to share this with somebody and we're going to have a talking circle, my energy is as well going to be transferred within whatever it is, a stone. Now these are natural elements, or like this is made out of deer hide, this little bookmark feather that I made out of deer hide. Or anything like a gift or a song or the words that I use, that is going to be transferred within that. And we know that, right? We know that when we're talking to each other, when we're giving to each other, it's going to be different in how I do that. If somebody shows up, or I see somebody cold on the street, or I'm going somewhere and there's a homeless person, it's going to be different if I'm pitying them, if I'm making them down here, like, look, you're homeless, and I don't know nothing about them. But the mainstream society puts us in a position to do this. We have learned to be so judgmental, and so it's going to be different if I'm going to give that person something. Now, granted, it's good to give. Okay, I'm not knocking that, but the energy is going to be different if I'm going to give that person, share something to that person, if I'm feeling up here and I'm pitying them. Okay, just imagine if somebody says, "Oh, you poor, pitiful thing," how that makes you feel. As opposed to giving that same person with respect and honor. It's going to be a different perspective and a different experience. They're going to get something out of that exchange that is much different, and I'm going to receive something out of that when I give them with respect and I honor them. It's going to be, that's why a lot of these programs that are servicing, as valuable as they are, as life-saving as they are, the people that need to be leading those programs and those efforts need to be coming from a perspective of mutual respect and honor. And that's why a lot of them are barely putting the fires out. They're just barely hanging in there. It's because they're being led by people who view themselves as better than the people that are serving. When we don't really typically know, we know that mental illness is very, very high in our relatives who are houseless, that are homeless, that are out on the streets. We know that, and we know. So, and in other words, I'm going to try and backtrack and come back to the main discussion. And so this philosophy is going to be in my life, in everything that I do, because there's no place in all of creation where this place isn't. Now, I could be mean, but in put people down, but that place that of deep respect is still within me, because it's a part of natural law. It's in all of creation. But I can certainly go throughout my life and be mean and cruel and put people down, but I'll have to pay the consequences of natural law. And that's typically what we're seeing for the most part in mainstream society. We're going through a real deep transformation in society, and a lot of people are resisting that. And so that's why us who are stewards to the land are forming alliances with native and non-natives. People are coming together because now we know that we're going to be needed now more than ever. And so it's going back to the reading, is that I'm not going to make any decisions unless I go out onto the land. Now, this is going to be up to each individual. Now, you might, unless I'm going to, you can make a good decision without having to do that. But I promise you, and I know this from my own experience, is that I am more in balance when I'm making decisions that are based upon that philosophy of Mitakuye Oyasin. All my relatives, all my relationships, this respect for all of creation, not as I'm above the trees or I'm smarter than our four-legged relatives, but we are equal. And what that leads is to a decision that is much more in balance, much more. It's not being held back by the limitations of what we've been socialized for the most part to do, and that's only think of ourselves and that we're better than everybody else, or we're better than our four-legged relatives, our winged nations. We live in an interconnected system, and these winged nations will know and will start to reveal and get and have, and history has told us, our storytelling has told us that they have offered their teachings to us. The same thing with our animal nations, the same thing with the star nations, the same thing with the directions, the same thing with all of creation, is that they will offer us, and they have already offered us. We wouldn't be alive without the plant nations, without the waters. We just simply would not exist. But we have gotten so far socialized to believe that these are natural resources and we need to save them, which is true. We have to do our part. But we forgot that they saved us, and that this is equal, that I'm not any less and you're not any less, that it's equal. And now look, now we can begin to understand. If I'm down here or I'm putting you down here, we're not going to be able to understand each other. You're going to sense that I'm talking down to you. And so who's the weak one here? Typically, it's going to be this one, right? But really, when you think about it, who is weak? It's the one that thinks that he or she is better than everybody else. That includes a fellow two-legged. That includes our four-legged relatives. That includes our waters. And this is the problem that we're seeing today. And that's why native indigenous people are going to lead the way. That's why native indigenous people in philosophies are being sought out more at an increase by non-native people who have also, they call them woke. That's true. But now it's something bad. But now a lot of our non-native relatives are turning towards us, because now they see what is happening, and now they see that we are more closely connected to this way of life, to this philosophy. And so it goes right back to what the book said is, I'm not going to make a decision. And of course, when you go into ceremony, if you go into Inipi, right? You go into Sweat Lodge, you're connecting with the waters. You're asking the water nation to help us to be in prayer and to help us to get answers, right? The cleansing water. We're asking the stone nation, we refer to them as grandfathers, to help us. We're asking the fire nation to heat the stones, to keep us warm, and to get us ready for ceremony, right? We're asking the wood nation, the standing people, the tree nation, to also participate in that. And all that is happening, and that's bringing us into balance, right? We're being purified. Our consciousness through the songs, in our bodies through the sweat. We're receiving that type of help. Okay, so that's a prime example. And so when I leave the sweat, I'm being given, because I made that connection within that respect. And I've sung and I'm humble, right? I'm on my hands and knees on Grandmother Earth. Right? They say that it's almost like being a newborn baby. You're starting all over again. But I've seen many people who go into sweat who it can work the other way, right? It's just like somebody going into church. You can go into church and give into the basket and sing songs and be there. But if you're not letting it's a philosophy. It's just not something that you attend. It's something that you live. And so that is what is going to be a part of the great change that is going to, and it has been. It has been. Oh my gosh. And so that is with inside every single person. Not there isn't a person where it isn't inside of. That would be like me looking at a deer and saying, "Oh, it's not inside that deer, but it's inside that deer." Okay? So it's not up to me, but certainly it's up to me to identify and to be that type of relative. And so when the Stone Nation knows that I have that respect, now they're going to now that because now we're like this, now we can communicate with each other. It's just like this stone. Okay? When I put this in my hand, I'm with a relative. And whatever I say and do, because I know that I'm with a relative, is going to be different than if I were to set this relative down. And so that's why a lot of people will carry a stone around in their pocket, because they want a relative to be that close. That's why, well, for a lot of reasons, eagle feathers and things such as that. So I get these are referred to not as resources or the environment, they're referred to as gifts, as relatives. And so we need to gift these, we need to offer gifts back, okay, to show that respect. And so that's why sometimes we put food out, we offer song, we offer, and that's why two-leggeds are stewards of the land, to make sure that we're giving back. And so a language has a lot to do with it, but also non-language, body language. Trust me, Grandmother Earth knows when I'm walking on the earth with respect. And she also knows when I'm walking on her with a mindset of, I don't care. Okay? And the same goes true when we're facing the winds. I know the northern winds are coming and they're going to bring cold, right? And most of the people are going to start complaining about that. And granted, of course, it's cold. We're kind of shut down. It's going to make things a little more difficult. But be really, really careful about the words that you choose to use. Because back in the day, we didn't do that. We knew that the wind was going to come from the north, and it was going to purify the land. It was going to purify all of Grandmother Earth. And it was going to teach us something. And so that was the time when we went through the great storytelling time. And there's stories that talk about how far that goes back. And so be careful about, and I'm not 100% perfect on this. When I walk out and I'm like, brr, man, and so I can have like a really salty attitude towards the winds too. So I'm working on it too, relatives. But that respect is there for the directions. And that's why those songs come into play. You can sing a song, and that the wind then is going to sense your energy, and you're going to learn something. You're going to see the winds as a gift. And so that's what we're taught. That's a philosophy that we have. And now I have a kinship that is all around me. Now I have a respect that is all around me. And now not only do I know this, but all of creation knows this about me. And so now we're equal, and now there's not these blockages, that lack of respect are preventing. There is like a vein. There is like what else do they call them? There is like a channel. There's like a vein for blood to flow, right? Now we're reaching each other. We're experiencing each other. We're keeping each other alive. We're influencing each other. And that is much different than if I'm going to make a decision based upon I'm going to do it all myself. I'm going to only look after myself. I'm going to put conditions on how I respect you. And that's basically what we're taught. We've been socialized to do that. And so part of the wisdom of the elders comes from, and when you think of elders, right, you think in terms of old men and old lady. Well, now you're talking about the elders of all of creation. The Wakina Oyate, the Thunder Nation. Like I said, all these nations, all these relatives. So now we're able to be in balance. We're able to live in balance. Even if we love somebody, we're able to bring that type of love within. And now that creates an interconnectedness. And now we're together. And so now that will bring to you, that will influence how you see life, how you see death. It will influence how you speak to one another. It will speak to how our relatives speak to us. It'll come within our dreams. It'll affect us in every which way that makes us as people. And I wouldn't want that to be subject to anybody without that. But lots of people are starved for that. And that's why you see so much materialism. Oh, I got a great phone, but the new iPhone 93 is out. I just bought 92, but now I got to run out and I got to be 93. Now I got to look a certain way to fit in. Now I have to do certain things. Now, it's okay to want to get an iPhone 93, but when you're in balance, it's the material things that aren't going to feed me to be in balance. It's not going to be the iPhone 93 or the SUV that's going to put me in balance. Now, again, it's okay to want those type of things and to have those type of things. But when you start to live this philosophy, it becomes much more a demonstration of the person that you are, is what you are giving. And I'm not just talking about material things. See, that's usually what we think in terms of. And that's not to be underestimated, because giving a good blanket goes a long ways. But giving of respect, sharing of generosity, giving of your time, listening. And so that is the value of the people where I am, where I come from. And that's who I am. And so it took me a long way to come back, for my soul and my spirit to come back. And so the benefit of that is now I know of what it's like to be gone. And so now we're able to help people who are away from the circle. And we're able to help each other. And again, when I say people, remember, I'm not just talking about two-leggeds, right? I'm not just talking about two-leggeds. And so we have a very short time on earth as right now as who we are. It's very short. And so I would just say, if your soul speaks to this type of thing, then time can be so short. Life can be so short and precious. It's to look for ways, and it's real simple. Just ask, because all that wisdom and all that is already inside of you. And just asking will all of a sudden let the walls come down. And the answers might kind of like bum rush you. And that might cause you to sort of like step back. Like, whoa, I'm not ready for that. Well, creation in this energy and this interconnectedness already knows what you're ready for. But it's we've been socialized to think in terms of measurement without our relationship with all of creation. We've been socialized to measure and to judge what we're ready for, what we're not. And so when you do that, they already know what you're ready for. And you're going to know that. I know that a long time before I sobered up, I knew that I had a problem. Now, this isn't an anti-alcohol and drug thing. If you drink and you're able to do that, then fine. I'm not saying that. Okay? I'm just only giving this as an example. Is long before I ever gave up alcohol and drugs, I was addicted. I was 17 years old when I knew I had a problem. But again, we often don't think that we're ready, or we're often afraid. Well, that was creation speaking to me and saying, and we've been socialized to think, well, I'll be in trouble. Well, now I'll have to do this. Now I'll have to do that. Fear-based thinking. Fearful, rooted thinking. That's what mainstream society is rooted into. And so that's what happens, is usually people sort of turn back because they get afraid. And now fear is natural, it is good because it keeps us safe. But we've been socialized and conditioned to be afraid of that which is of creation, that which is of wisdom, that which is our strength. And so that can be very, very difficult, and that's the part of walking this path as a human being, is having to learn about natural law and the consequences of wanting to do it all by myself, based upon a fear-based system. The love-based system is completely different. But how long have I been on? I don't know, but I've been on for quite a while. But I thought it was a good reason. It brought up a good thoughts and reflection that that I feel good about for myself, and I hope that you did too. And so, again, I've decided to do these readings on YouTube, but if you didn't catch the first part of the video, I did something really, really embarrassing before I came on here. I mean, really embarrassing. I mean, when you think of embarrassment, I'm talking like the peak of embarrassment. So I was kind of distracted. It wasn't something that harmed somebody, but certainly it was just really, 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 really embarrassing. Yeah. So anyways, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I will talk to you soon. And I'll probably do more. Again, my goal is to do more of these readings, and tonight I wasn't able to hit a talking circle. So I felt like it was going to be important for me to do a reading like this tonight. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching. Please feel free to comment, to get a hold of me if you need to sort of hear more and connect as equals in balance. Yeah, feel free because as relatives, that's what we're doing is we're being relatives towards each other. And so with that, I'll thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon. Oops. All right.